Welcome to this edition of the YAHOWAH blog. I'm your host, Craig Winn. This is the Chakmah Choter series. We're continuing now to pursue the ultimate sermon. And I know sermon's a religious term, and I certainly don't want to use it like that. But this is the prelude to which should have been known as the Sermon on the Mount. Has nothing to do with Jesus. It has all to do with the real Messiah and the Son of God, the actual King, the Father of the man that is making this pronouncement. It is the prelude to Solomon's declaration regarding the Nakri, the observant foreigner who would speak on behalf of Yahweh to awaken Yisrael from their collective stupor during this time of rising anti-Semitism beyond what the world has ever previously experienced. And so as we approach what will be the most difficult time in the history of Jews, worse than the Holocaust, worse than the 3 Roman invasions of Judea, worse than being hauled off by the Syrians into slavery, worse than the Babylonian occupation of Judea and destruction of the temple, worse than what Muslims have perpetrated against Israel, although this will be largely a result of progressives serving as Islam's pimps to destroy Israel. The answer is to listen to the Nakri. And as we continue to pursue this testimony regarding Solomon's announcement, we do so in the context of prophecy being fulfilled. I say that quietly and humbly because I recognize something in Yeshaya 17 and 18 a decade ago that indicated that at this time Israel would be dissected at her midsection and forced to accept an Islamic state carved out of her heart. And I deduce this from Yeshaya, Isaiah 17 and 18, and I've been proclaiming it for at least a decade. And then more recently, as I have examined my translations, improved them, and expanded upon my commentary and the insights that can be deduced from Isaiah 17, I've come to recognize that the state of Islamic terrorism that will be awarded to the Fakistinians, which is nothing but a name derived to perpetrate genocide against Jews, will be in effect this year, over the next 12 months. And that's a certainty. And well, I cannot annul, I cannot change what is going to happen. What I can do is be the one who has warned the Israelites, warned Yehudim, told Jews and Israelis that this is going to happen so that you're prepared and willing to listen to what the alternative could have been, should have been, that you put less trust in the institutions that have brought you this doom upon you, and that you begin listening at long last to your God. And that's why I am here at this time. The United Nations is meeting the 1st of next month in New York to discuss the creation of a Palestinian state. And under those circumstances, Israel becomes instantly indefensible. A Palestinian state is the gateway back to the Holocaust. And it is with that backdrop that I want you to listen to this preamble to the ultimate Sermon on the Mount, to what God inspired Solomon to reveal to you so that you would avoid the ensuing calamity. So they ascended with the ark of Yahowah. It's not the ark of Hashem. It's not the ark of blessed be he. It is not the ark of Adonai. It is not the ark of G-D. It most certainly isn't the ark of Jesus. It isn't the ark of Mr. Christ. It isn't the ark of Allah. They ascended with the ark of Yahowah. If you want to benefit from that ark, which represents the covenant, if you want your soul to receive the benefits of the mercy seat that is that ark, the Kaporeth, then you need to know that it is being offered by and belongs to Yahowah. I wrote earlier today and did a video underscoring it, that it is impossible to be Torah observant without acknowledging and pronouncing Yahweh's name. All of those who claim that they are Torah students, that they are observing the Torah, and yet neglect and erase Yahweh's name, are lying. And that would be every religious Jew. That would be every Christian that even studies the Torah. So they ascended with the ark of Yahowah and with the tent of the tabernacle of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony of these meeting times, in addition to all of the set apart and special vessels and implements which, for the benefit of the relationship, were in the tabernacle. The priests and the Loe ascended with them. This is actually prophetic because Yahweh is going to reestablish the tent of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony to fulfill the moed of Teruah and Kippurim on behalf of his people, Yisrael, and it will rise on the Temple Mount once the witnesses arrive and the scars of the dome and of the mosque are removed. So with the house completed, the tent of the restoring witness was no longer needed at this time, although it will be reused because it's about to just now a matter of 4.5 years from finding its way back onto the Temple Mount, serving as the home for the restoring witnesses, Elia and Yada. And it will, of course, be gone between then and now, but it will make its debut again. And it will serve as our home and the home of the Aaron Bereth of Yahweh, which our Father will raise for the occasion. And the king, Solomon, and the entire witnessing community of Yisrael, who had chosen to join together over him, were with him before the ark. And a goat and a bull were sacrificed for the benefit of the relationship. They were not counted or proclaimed, and they were not numbered or apportioned from the many. I love Yahweh. You are so clever. Malachim 1 Kings 8:5. The two individuals that are going to be the final two witnesses, Yada and Elia, are known as a goat and a bull. Elia is the goat and Yada is the bull. And they will both be sacrificed so that their blood anoints the mercy seat, the Kaporeth of the Ark of the Covenant. And of course, the bull will be the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on Teruah that will be orchestrated by the master of ceremonies, known as Eliah, who again is the goat. And they will be sacrificed for the benefit of the relationship, but they were not counted or proclaimed, and they were not numbered or apportioned from the many. That's because they are not known for the role that they will play. Very few people, in fact, until I began to say it, no one knew who the goat was, why it was a goat's blood on the Kaporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, why it would be Dod that would be applying it, why it was a bull that would also be presented on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant even before the goat. And again, Dod splattering it 7 times with his fingers. But this, my friends, is Yahweh infusing his historic text with prophetic overtones. It doesn't matter where we go. Everywhere you want to read a story that is in the Torah or in the writings or in the prophets, and there's always a story within the story. It's Yahweh's the greatest of all storytellers, and he has positioned within his prose prophecy even within history, and that is what we're witnessing here. So when this is reenacted on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem on the first day of the 7th month in year 6000 Yah, that would be October 24th in 2033, there will be someone claiming to be wise and sovereign who will be gathering the people together while touting his plan for religious reconciliation and political peace. Solomon is, in my judgment, the harbinger in this regard for what is to come, and he is representing the adversary in this regard. Solomon became the living embodiment of religion, which is something that Yahweh despises. And yet on this day, he was able to use him. And there are lots of people who Yahweh can use in this regard who are opposed to what God is trying to achieve ultimately. And while I'm not saying that Solomon at this moment was opposed to what God was trying to achieve, he certainly fell into that condition. We also find that with Miriam when she was called a prophetess for singing on behalf of the women the Song of the Sea while Moshe led the men. And yet it wasn't a matter of a month or so later, and she was ostracized and painted with leprosy by Yahweh. And so it is certainly possible. It happens in a number of situations where somebody goes from good to bad. And Solomon happens to symbolize that. Even Hasatan is symbolic of that. Something that most people don't think of, but Hasatan, for who knows how many years, was a guard on the wall of the Garden of Eden. He was a cherub, and as such, he performed a service, and he went rogue and, became an anathema to God and to all God was trying to achieve. So this does happen, and it was very clear that it happens quite often. So it is on the first day of the 7th month in the 120th Yobel year that a goat named Eliah will oversee the sacrifice of Yada as the Adamah Parah, the red heifer, on behalf of the Passover lamb to restore Yisrael and prepare God's people for his imminent arrival. This also suggests something that really isn't overtly stated anywhere, but is certainly insinuated in a number of places, that after overseeing this, and then in preparation for Kippurim and Dod's return as the Messiah and the Son of God, our King, that there will be a sacrifice made by Elia as well, and his blood will join mine on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, as orchestrated this time by Dowd, our king. And our goal collectively is that we're restoring God's people. So Yada, as the Adamah Parah, the red heifer, serving on behalf of the Passover lamb, will work to restore Yisrael. We're preparing God's people for his imminent arrival. And they are the ones counted among those who have chosen to be with God. And it is the blood of the goat and the bull that anoint the mercy seat, the Kaporeth of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurim, when Dowd returns with Yahowah on Kippurim, the 10th day of the 7th month, 6:22 p.m., as the sun sets in Jerusalem, the 2nd of October, 2033. Now, as we consider this prophetic overture regarding our future, now that the morning of September 23rd, 2033, Elia is going to be acting in the role of a Cohen, as he follows the Torah's Numbers 19 instructions relative to the sacrifice of the red heifer to restore the children of Yisrael. Actually, it'd be the morning of September 24th. September 23rd is that evening will be the Teruah ingathering. The 24th will be the sacrifice of the red heifer, both Teruah. The priests arrived and brought the Ark of the Covenant of Yahowah to its innermost place of the word of the family home, to the most set apart place, to under the wings of the cherubim. Interesting the way this is phrased. Malachim, 1 Kings 8:6. The priests, of course, were prescribed by Yahowah to serve God's people by orchestrating these kinds of events and administering the agenda and festivals of Yahowah so that the people would understand them and benefit from them. God needs people set apart to explain his Torah and to do the various things that are orchestrated and explained in the Torah, and that's what the priests are doing here. And the Ark of the Covenant of Yahowah, and this is the Eth Aaron Bereth Yahowah. So this Ark of the Covenant family of Yahowah is positioned in the innermost place of the Word, El Makom, which is a place. It is an office. It's the source of all things. And it's Debir, which is a derivation of Debar, of the family home. And so if you were not aware that Bereth, covenant, is a derivative of Be'eth, I should say, family and home, here it is. The only difference between Bereth and Be'eth is the Rosh in Hebrew, which is depicted as the head of a individual, ears, eyes, brain, listening, seeing, thinking. So the Be'eth is a thinking man's family. The family of those who listen, who observe, and who ponder what they have perceived. But they are related terms. And so this Ark of the Covenant is being brought into the innermost place of the Word, the message of the family home. And it is a symbol of the covenant of Yahowah. It goes to the most set apart place, which is Kodesh HaKodesh, the most set apart. And that means there is no other place more unique, more special, more separated from the things of man, like religion and politics. And it was under the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim wings sit on the sides and back of the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, and they also sit in the corners of the most set apart space within the temple itself, the home for Yahweh's name, and that their wings go against the back wall and they come out on the side walls. So you see a replica of the cherubim wings on the walls, back wall, like this, and then on the side wall, coming to me, I'm doing this wrong for the camera, but side walls and then the back walls for the both the set apart place within the home for Yahweh's name, and also on the sides and the back of the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. In other words, the thing called the Holy of Holies, the most special place within the temple, the home for Yahweh's name, that room and the one object that sits within it, the Ark of the Covenant, share much in common. One reflects the other. I think we should be anticipating cherubim to not only protect the Aron Bareth of Yahweh within the Oel Moedim tabernacle of the restoring witness in 2033, but also to be playing a role protecting the witnesses. Now, currently, the witnesses, this witness, Elia, is still in Shamaim. He will be brought back in a matter of 4.5 years. But normally we are protected by Malach, and the cherubim are members of the Malach group. They are Saba, part of the heavenly host, if you will. But they are distinguished in that there are very few of them relative to just Malach in general, of which there are many thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And while they all perform for Yahweh, doing what Yahweh wants, protecting those and supporting those, Yahweh designates being the eyes and ears, even sometimes the mouth of Yahweh when necessary, because Yahweh is 7-dimensional, can't enter our 3-dimensional realm here in the material world. And he has to have probes like this to do that and to interact with us. But the cherubim are they're designated a slightly different task. Well, it's maybe not so much different as the most important part of that task. So while Malach are protective of all of those that Yahweh chooses, and there may be hundreds, sometimes thousands applied to protect a certain individual or a group of people, with the cherubim, they're almost always in twos. Hasatan broke away and did something as a singular one, but they protect the inner sanctum, the most set apart and special place of the tabernacle for Yahweh's name, and also the mercy seat. You're not climbing on that mercy seat unless you belong to be there. And so they protect the most Kodesh of things. So it says, indeed, the cherubim, the wings spread out to the place over the ark and over its poles from above. The poles alone were so long that the ends of the poles were seen out of the set apart place beyond the presence of the inter sanctum of the word. But they could not be seen from the outside. They existed there, restoring and as a restoring and eternal witness of this day. Malachim 1 Kings 8:8. It just tickles me that the poles were put in to carry the ark because it was heavy, and one person wasn't going to carry it, but this way you could have one or two people forward on each of those two poles, one or two people aft of the Ark of the Covenant on each of those two poles, even three if necessary. So you could have anywhere from 8 to 12 people carrying the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders with these poles. That's how it was carried. That way, no one actually had to touch the Ark of the Covenant. And that way, it was quite easy for everyone to see it as it came by. That way, it wasn't a burden for really any one of those carrying it. And these poles were specifically designed to lift it up and to be put on men's shoulders as they carried it. But once you put it in place, you can take the poles out. It's been a long time, I guess, since they had provided this service, and they obviously didn't bother to take the poles out, which is why they were sticking outside of the set apart place. It's just funny when you read things. God's going to tell you this is how it actually happened. He's not going to say that this happened because they were smart. He just said this is what happened, and we can chuckle at all of this as he's giving an accurate rendition of what transpired. This says there was nothing in the ark except the two tablets. And there had been previously other accoutrements inside of the ark. Moshe's staff is one of the things that sometimes is said to have been there. But there were other accoutrements in the ark from time to time. But at this point, it was just the two tablets of stone that were placed inside of it. The original autograph of the Torah it may well be inside of it now, but was supposed to be set alongside of it, carried in its presence beside it, and always kept adjoining it, so you'd understand the purpose of the ark. And I don't know if it's sitting beside it now or inside of it, but the original autograph of the Torah will also be made available. So there was nothing in the ark except the two tablets of stone that, for the benefit of the relationship, Moshe placed there at Choreb, where, to show how to get the most out of life, he established the covenant of YAHOWAH with the children of Israel. This means that the covenant was indeed established through Israel. Doesn't mean that if you're part of Israel, you're automatically part of that covenant. It means that it was established with you. You still individually and collectively have to choose to be part of it, to engage in it, but at least you were charter members of the covenant family. By bringing them out of the land of Mitzrayim, the anguishing and confining crucibles of oppression, you become members of the covenant family by walking away from religion and politics, from the kinds of things that caste economic system that was so debilitating in Mitzrayim, the warlike nature and militarism of Mitzrayim, and of course the religion and politics of Mitzrayim, of men pretending to be gods. That is what you walk away from to be members of the covenant. So when Jews, Christians, Muslims walk back into religion, as Jews have had a propensity to do since that very date, then you're walking back into confinement and walking away from the covenant. So walk to the covenant and be part of it. You have to walk away from the religion and politics of Mitzrayim. And to walk away from the covenant, you re-engage in religion and politics. Now, as for me, I'm, of course, looking forward to seeing both the Ark of the Covenant and those tablets, along with the original autograph of the Torah, all of which will be revealed by Yahweh while his witnesses are in Jerusalem. And as an interesting aside, the contents of the ark were disclosed in Devarim 10:1-5, affirming what Solomon is asserting on this occasion. However, both serve as proof that Paul, as the author of the Christian New Testament, lied when he added the Ark of the Covenant, wherein was the golden pot that that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant in Hebrews 9:4. There are two ways to view what happens next, because the home for Yahweh's name was immediately consumed by a cloud of smoky water vapor, and to such an extent that the Cohen were actually unable to proceed. So I suspect that this was because Yahweh was disappointed in Solomon's attitude, as well as the lack of priestly competence on this day. And this was his way of showing his consternation. He ran everyone out of the home for the covenant family because there was no one that actually belonged. Further, by filling the covenant home with a cloud of ashen smoke and water, Yahweh is bringing us forward 3,000 years in time to Towrah's fulfillment. It is then that he's going to unleash a torrent of water beneath the sacrifice of the red heifer while igniting a fire that will send ashen smoke billowing to the heavens and cascading down upon his people. And it came to pass when the priests came out of the set-apart place, in the set-apart place, this is from HaKodesh, this unique and separated place of ultimate uncommonness. This cloud of water and smoke completely filled the family home of Yahweh, such that the priests became confused and incapacitated, and thereby incapable of remaining present and standing as attendants as a result of the presence of the cloud of water and ashen smoke. For it completely covered Yahweh's honorable and respectful nature within Yahweh's family home. Well, since Solomon's response cast Yahweh in a poor light while improperly gloating over what others had achieved, and since the king misquoted the Almighty, I see this as a harbinger of what will commence during the upcoming time of Jacob's troubles. Solomon, rather than representing Yahweh or Dode, is playing the role of the Taurus one, at least at this moment. And while God is explaining what he is going to accomplish on behalf of his people with the sacrifice of the red heifer, in these words, Solomon's response isn't correct. Now, the corporeal manifestation of the adversary will emerge from relative obscurity over the next year, and he's going to rise to world prominence by the Shavuot harvest. Therefore, recognizing that Solomon was wrong, I think this is prophetic. Then at that moment, Shalom, reconciliation, said, Yahweh has stated that he would dwell in the deep gloom and the miserable darkness of a thick cloud which blocks the light. Dabarim ha yomim, words of the day, 2 Chronicles 6:1. In actuality, during the Exodus, God stated that he would watch over and lead the children of Israel to the promised land as a columnar cloud during the day and as a pillar of light by night. Yahweh is light, not darkness. What's true, however, is that Yahweh left the children of Israel not long thereafter, and he has become hidden to them. And it was they who had established the smokescreen that has separated them. After inappropriately extinguishing God's light, the king turned the spotlight on himself, well, in the fashion of Israel heretofore. But I myself have built a magnificent dwelling with extraordinarily beautiful construction, a celestial palace of a house for you, a dwelling place and site for you to sit and inhabit forever. Dabarim Ha-Yomim, 2 Chronicles 6:2. Solomon didn't actually build the house. The support beams, stonemasons, and lead contractor were all from Lebanon. And the house was actually understated, not grandiose, all in keeping with Yahweh's persona. And of course, Yahweh resides in Shamaim, in the seventh dimension. He is not about to be restrained in something men have made. Further, since the house was looted many times thereafter and razed to the ground 4 centuries later, forever may have been, well, the improper depiction of time. But alas, such are the wiles of men. Kings typically want gods they can control and cut down to their own size. The man god of Jesus certainly comes to mind. However, I digress. This was Solomon's time to shine. When the king came full circle, turning back to the beginning with his presence, he knelt down to lift up and bless the entire assembled community of Israel, these individuals who engage and endure with God, while everyone gathered assembled of Israel, and they were present, standing. Then he said, Yahweh, the God of Israel, is extolled, based upon what he has communicated with his mouth to Daud, my father, and with his hand and influence, he has fulfilled these proclamations. Dabarim Ha-Yomim, 2 Chronicles 6:4. Well, part of that was certainly correct. Reconciliation is Daud's trademark. It is also symbolic of the day Daud will return to reclaim his throne and his home on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations. This is one of the many ways Yahweh Sabab comes full circle with his plans, bringing us back to where we began in the Garden of Eden. To Solomon's credit, Yahweh and Daud's names were cited throughout this proclamation. Our fate hinges upon what father and son discussed. It is what Yahweh and Daud achieved, and they have fulfilled together, that has the power to transform our lives. Well, it has been 4 centuries since the chosen people were freed from religious and political persecution in Mitzrayim at this time, but it was still fresh on everyone's mind. For it was said, from the day that, for the benefit of the relationship, I brought out my people from the realm of the crucibles of troubling confinement and oppression, I did not choose a city from among all of the tribes of Israel to build a home for my name to exist there. Further, I have not chosen a man to exist as a worthy and conspicuous, announced and acknowledged leader over my people, Israel. 6:5. This was not stated in the Torah, which means that Shalom was ad-libbing. Yahweh disclosed to Abraham and Yishak that he would build his covenant on Mount Moriah, which is now in the heart of Jerusalem. And the Torah clearly states that the Moedim would be fulfilled in the place where Yahweh's name would dwell. Further, Moshe was a valiant and heroic leader of Israelites during the Yatzah. And his most famous prophecy is found in Devarim, words 18, and it points directly to and describes, and is prophetic of David. Continues, but I have chosen with Jerusalem the source of guidance on reconciliation, that my name will exist here. And I have chosen with Dod to be over my people, Yisrael. Well, this is quite interesting, because if Yahowah, which this is how this reads, says in his inspired text that he chose, this is now Yahowah speaking, that he chose Dod to be the one to reign over his people. And this date was now, 11 years from the end of Dod's first life. That means Dod has more than one life, doesn't it? Yes. Dod, in his first life, passed away 4 years before the cornerstone of the tabernacle was laid. And this was 7 years after that. So I have chosen with Jerusalem the source of guidance on reconciliation, that my name will exist here, and I have chosen with Dod to be over my people, Yisrael. Well, excuse me for interrupting your faith, Twistians, but this statement negates your religion. It's not good for Judaism or Islam either, since rabbis await an unknown Messiah, and Muslims have been led to believe that a sexual pervert and ruthless terrorist was their chosen leader. That aside, God continues, it was in the heart and mind, inclination and judgment of Dod. Solomon said, my father, to build a home for the name of Yahowah, the God of Yisrael. The rabbinical types want to call the building that existed on the Temple Mount a temple. I'll bet you've never heard a rabbi ever say that the building was called a home for Yahweh's name. And yet, here in the writings, 2 Chronicles, that's the name. It is the home for Yahweh's name. Now, why do you think the rabbis chose to misrepresent the description of the building that Yahowah provided, that Solomon spoke about, that was the original name of the building, the home for Yahweh's name? Because they erased Yahweh's name? Because they don't like Yahweh's name? Because they don't like that title? Think of the consequence of changing the name to suit the religion. Then Yahowah said to Dod, my father, because it was in your best judgment, Dod, my father, to build a home for my name, what was in your heart and mind is beautiful and good, generous and beneficial. I'm not sure that was ever stated. But it is true that Yahowah recognized, that's the whole nature of the soliloquy that exists in 2 Samuel 7, is that Dod wanted to build a home for Yahweh's name. And Yahowah says, why should you do that? So this idea that there was this discussion like this, not so much. Yahowah is going to allow Dod to build a home for the covenant family and for his name in just 8.5 years' time. And so the one that matters, the one that exists for all time, the one that will serve Yahowah and his covenant family for eternity, is going to be built by Dod. And that's the one that really matters. But nonetheless, it is not necessarily good for men to want to build a home for God. In fact, God's quite clear that it's not a good idea for men to want to build a home for God. God's quite happy in the home that he has conceived for himself, and that he will hang out with us here. Part of him will, at least, um, during the celebration of the millennial Shabat. But when the most beneficial and beautiful version of the home for Yahweh's name is conceived, it's going to be built by Dode. Now, while Solomon was stumbling over his choice of pronouns and including himself in the narrative, he may also have been projecting his thoughts into a discussion that occurred apart from him. Yahweh was initially troubled by Dode's desire to build him a house, as is demonstrated, as I've just shared, in 2 Samuel 7. Further, Yahweh precluded Dode from this interim version and iteration of the house for his name, because he intended to use the blood that was on Dode's hands for another purpose 3,000 years hence, when he anoints the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant with the aforementioned bull and goat. And it is then that Yahweh will honor Dode's request and allow the king to build the eternal residence for the covenant family. Now, in this next statement, we find that Solomon interpreted the statement Twistians rely upon to suggest that the Messiah would be a descendant of Dode in a manner which impugns the religion. So Solomon saw it as addressing him, and thus not an unknown Christ 1,000 years later. Further, there was no mention of a Messiah in this prophecy, in the prophecy of 2 Samuel 7. So no mention of a Messiah, and the one that Christians steal, 2 Samuel 7. And here Dode is saying, Solomon is saying, that son they were referring to, it's me. And so between the two, you've just destroyed one of the most important stolen texts by Christians, beyond the fact, of course, that there's only one name ascribed to the Son, to the king, to the returning king, to the throne, to everything that transpires and is stated in 2 Samuel 7. And that one is Dode's. There is, of course, no mention of Mr. Christ. Nevertheless, that notwithstanding, you will not build a house, but instead your son, the coming forth from your loins, he will build the home for my name. Oops, so much for Christianity. What is particularly revealing here is that the Be'eth, I should say, was a family home, and that Yahweh had no intention of living there or even of occupying the premises. Its purpose was to serve as a home for his name. And yet, Yahweh Shem was the first thing Jews removed, and Christians have not bothered to even mention, nor did they return. Moreover, it is the very thing restored by the Nakri in Yada Yahowah. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, Yahweh has taken a stand to establish and fulfill this statement that, for the benefit of the relationship, he has spoken. And I have taken a stand to establish and fulfill beneath Dode, my father, because I sit on the throne of Yisrael, as Yahweh spoke, and I have built the home for the name of Yahweh, the God of Yisrael. 6:10. I have placed there the Aaron, the ark, which beneficially and relationally is the Bereth covenant of Yahweh, to show the way to get the most out of life and to cut with the children and establish with the children of Yisrael. So Solomon was actively proclaiming Yahweh's name. He knew the building was a Bayeth Shem, a home for the name. He recognized he was in position due to this relationship Yahweh developed with his father, Dod. That's the only reason he was here. He was aware that the Ark of the Covenant was to be housed within this place because of the relationship Yahweh had with his father, Dod. It all comes back to Dod as the centerpiece of the covenant and of Yahweh's home, of his family. In 1 Kings 8 and again in 2 Chronicles 5, it is affirmed that the Ark of the Covenant was carried by the priests from the city of Dod, along the ridgeline of Zion and into the Bayeth Shem. It was placed in the Kodesh Kodesh during the Chag of the 7th month, which would begin with Towrah and progress through Kippurim to Sukkah. The image cast is that of Solomon standing and then kneeling upon a platform that he had built to serve as the Mizbach, the altar, to ponder the implications of the sacrifice of Yahweh. It is germane to this story because it will be in a replica of this altar that the carcass of the Adamah Parah will be placed and then burned on Teruah to heal the adulterous woman of Israel. And he was present, standing before the presence of the altar to ponder the implications of the sacrifice of Yahweh, conspicuously in the presence of the entire gathered community of Israel. Then he spread out the palms of his hands. Solomon made a bronze platform to be used as a cauldron and a basin, and he offered it as a gift within the inner court, it being 5 cubits or 8 feet long and 5 cubits or 8 feet wide, while it was 3 cubits or nearly 5 feet tall. And he stood on it, and he knelt on a knee conspicuously before all of the assembled of Israel, and he spread out the palms of his hands towards the heavens. Dabadim ha-yomim, 2 Chronicles 6:13. Not only will the bloodied body of the Nakri sit within this elevated basin, it is replete with 2 features relevant to the herald's mission. First, there is a ramp integrated into the design, serving as the raised path of the voice of Yahweh, and that he is asked to clear of obstacles, since it leads through this sacrifice to God. Second, there are horns on the corners, 2 representing the ram and a pair representing the bull, Dod and Yada, the 2 men slated to sacrifice their bashar, their bodies, for the good of the people, one during the spring, the other during the fall, Moedim. And he said, Yahweh, God of Israel, there is nothing like you, God, in the heavens and on the earth, considering and exploring the Bereth covenant, and the one showing unfailing love and devotion, genuine favor and affection to your co-workers who walk toward your presence with all of their thinking and emotions, their judgment and motivations, who, for the benefit of the relationship, closely examine and carefully consider the approach of your co-worker, Dod, my father, that to reveal the way you spoke to him. Head and heart, exercising good judgment for the benefit of the relationship, closely examine and carefully consider the approach of Yahweh's co-worker, Dowd, what he said and what he did, particularly as he foretold and then honored his sacrifice as the Passover lamb, as the one who carried out the promise of matzah and fulfilled Bakodim as the Bakor, firstborn son. You spoke with your mouth and with your hand, and you have fulfilled the essence of this today. Yahweh spoke through the mouth of Moshe and through the hand, the influence of Dowd. And that is what has led to where Solomon was now standing on the Temple Mount before the home for Yahweh's name. The entrance to the covenant, where the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat were now placed. There is only one firstborn son of God, one returning king, and only one man who can be properly recognized as the most important of Yisrael's and Yahweh's Ebed, co-workers. But since Ebedim was plural, we would be wise to consider the one who would show the world how to walk towards Yahweh's presence through the recognition of how, when, where, why Dowd fulfilled Chakmah. It is not a coincidence that the first to discover and share Dowd's lives and lyrics and contribute to our lives in words is the Nakri that is foretold in this same Sermon on the Mount. Then, if only they had, what a wonderful world it would be, is the lead-in to this next statement. For therefore, Yahweh, God of Israel, observe on behalf of your co-worker, Dowd. My father, what you, for the benefit of the relationship, spoke to him, to say, not will cut off for you a person from before me to sit on the throne of Israel, if only under the restrictive condition your sons observe, closely examine, and carefully consider their way to walk in my Torah guidance and teaching, instructions and directions, consistent with the beneficial way you have walked before me. 2 Chronicles 6:16. So here we find Yahweh, God of Israel, the one who achieved our salvation, our reconciliation through Dowd, his father and son, saying that no one will be cut off from Israel so long as you recognize what Yahweh achieved through Dowd, and that you and your sons observe this restrictive condition, that you closely examine and carefully consider the Torah. Is the way to walk as the means that is beneficial. And that is the problem, because we have absolute proof that religious Jews are not Torah observant, because if you're Torah observant, you're going to know and proclaim Yahweh's name, and they do not. And as a result, now there are many who have been cut off when that didn't need to be the case. So it didn't happen, but it was prophetic. Even Solomon failed to live up to this bargain, and as a result, the throne of a united Israel would soon be unoccupied. And even then, virtually every leader of the northern kingdom of Yehudah and of Yehudah failed in this regard. But on the positive side, this statement does affirm that Dowd was resolutely Torah observant. And it was by walking in the Torah that Dowd's life became so exemplary. For there can be no now, therefore, when the conditions pursuant to the agreement are not met. Nevertheless, now, therefore, Yahweh, God of Israel, let your word be trustworthy and dependable, enduring and true, which for the benefit of the relationship you spoke to your co-worker, Dowd. It's Dowd. It's the home of Dowd. It's the covenant of Dowd. It is the work of Dowd. It is the throne of Dowd. Dowd is the king. It's Dowd. It's not hard to figure when you just consider what God said. There is no Jesus. There's not even a single Jesus. It's all about Dowd. All the time. Since Aman here as a verb was conveyed in the jussive volitional mood, which is trustworthy, Solomon is saying that he and those gathered before him wanted Yahweh's testimony to be truthful and dependable. And while that may have tickled the ears of the faithful and religious, it was an inappropriate thing to say. It implies that God has the option of reneging on his promises and of being misleading. It creates the impression that Yahweh can be disingenuous and capricious should he choose to be, both of which, by the way, are required for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, had Solomon been as wise as his father Dowd, he would have rendered this next pronouncement as a statement rather than a question to explain its purpose and describe the resident. Except, is it actually possible for God to dwell or sit with the men like Adam of the earth? 2 Chronicles 6:18 in part. Well, yes, it is possible for some aspect of God to dwell with his covenant family on earth. That is what occurred between Adam and Yahweh in the garden. It is the point of the Mikre and particularly of Kippurim and Sukkah. This is something Solomon should have known, since his father will serve as king over the earth when he returns with Yahweh and the planet is transformed back to the conditions experienced in Eden. So behold, the heavens and the heavens of the heavens cannot hold or contain you, so much more by contrast this house that I have built. Well, that's partially true. But the Shamaim, the heavens, and the heavens of the heavens are not like Sheol, and therefore it's not like a prison, and therefore it's not a containing vessel. And yes, a seven-dimensional being like Yahweh can exist within a seven-dimensional realm like Sheol, like Shamaim. That's why he created it that way. Sheol is a one-dimensional realm. Shamaim is seven. So Yahweh absolutely can fit within the home that he built for himself in seven dimensions. So who knows what point that Solomon was trying to make here. Maybe he just wanted to sound poetic. But even though Shamaim is limitless in the seventh dimension, it does not have the capacity to cool, hold, or contain anyone. That's not its purpose. Further, while we exist in 3.5 dimensions as physical beings encumbered by bodies, when we become akin to light, we will be liberated in space-time. And it is my conclusion, having studied Dowd's 19th Mizmor, that the universe is a 6-dimensional construct and that Shamaim exists in the 7th dimension. Now, while all of Yahweh, as a 7-dimensional being, won't fit in the six-dimensional physical universe that he created, much less on Earth or in a house or, of course, within a corporeal body, there is a solution which achieves his desired result. A tiny portion of spiritual energy can be transformed into matter. Thus, a body through Einstein's equation E equals mc squared. Then Yahweh, like all living beings capable of observing and responding, well, he also has a nephesh soul, and it serves this purpose. When it is placed within a spiritual or a physical being, it projects Yahweh's personality, his individuality, his characteristics and character, his memories even, his experiences and his ambitions. That's somewhat like an avatar. This is how Yahweh walked in the garden with Adam. It is how he dined with Abraham. And it's how he's going to return with Dowd. Now, it's also telling in this regard that it was by reconstituting Dowd's Bashar corporeal body through his DNA and then inserting Dowd's Nefesh consciousness into it that the king was able to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. This is how Yahweh will dispatch Yada and Elia from Shamayim to earth to serve as witnesses. This is not complicated for God. Now, as we proceed, we are confronted by one of the more challenging Hebrew terms. It's tefillah. It is routinely rendered as prayer in English Bibles, even though its etymological basis suggests no such thing. Confusing the issue, the popular Strong's Hebrew lexicon claims that tefillah was based upon palah, which is to intervene, intercede, and mediate. However, the more reasonable deduction, this is something that my buddy and fact checker Mike was able to pursue, and I think has a highly legitimate point here, is that it's more likely predicated on palah, to be distinct and separate, distinguished and wonderfully uncommon, even palak, which is to revere and to serve. We expand our consideration by pondering the ta prefix. It could be a contraction of ta'ah, to err, and to wander away, with the ain, and thus unlikely. Ta'ah, to mark and point out, with the aleph. To, to desire, or ta, room or chamber. Now, considering all of this, the most reasonable deduction from the component parts would be to render tapela as to point out the means to be distinct and separate, set apart and wonderfully special. Also possible, but maybe a little less probable, it means to mark out the way to intervene and intercede. But either way, there is no Hebrew word for pray or prayer because Yahweh solicits neither. Now, we'll share this as our concluding comment here in this episode. Yet you turn to face and appear to point out the means to be distinct and separate, set apart and uncommon, to your coworker, and for his plea and petition for favor, Yahweh my God, for listening to the rejoicing shouts, and by pointing out the means to be distinct and uncommon, such that your coworker meditates, arbitrates, mediates, and intervenes to approach your presence. Your eyes will be open to the house, day and night, to the place where you said to have placed your name there, so that you can listen to the request to be distinct and separate, set apart and uncommon, such that your coworker pleads for intervention upon this place. This is Dabarim HaYomim, 2 Chronicles 6:19 and 6:20. This is a a perplexing series of statements, and we'll spend most of our time analyzing at the beginning of our next program. But just as a bit of a send away, the first thing you have to realize is that the person that has repeatedly been called the Abed of Yahweh is Dode, not Solomon. And so it is Yahweh who does, in fact, recognize that the means for us to be set apart, for us to be uncommon, for us to be drawn to Yahweh away from religion and politics, is to recognize what Yahweh achieved with his coworker and the plea and petition for favor that Yahweh made possible by listening to and working with Dode in this very distinct and uncommon way, such that his coworker, Dode, was able to arbitrate and intervene so that we could approach God's presence. So with that thought, I bid you adieu for this episode of Chakmah Choter. I thank you for listening and look forward to being with you as we rejoin. Good day.